Hello, and welcome to God in Film, the podcast where a Christian and an atheist dive into the best that cinema has to offer and see if we can find any parallels with the gospel or any other Bible stories. I'm podcaster and ever-loving brown-eyed thing, Giles Goff.
And I'm librarian and Birmingham's smartest woman, Julia Hall.
I could believe that. I could quite easily
Honestly,
believe that.
yeah. If you've been to Birmingham, the bar's not high.
And continuing with season 8 of this lockdown project that got out of hand, we'll be looking at Fantastic Four First Steps. We'll be asking if Stan Lee's esoteric view on God impacted his storytelling, whether the Silver Surfer is more like Jesus or Lucifer, and whether God himself might in fact be a cantankerous comic book artist. Julia, what did you think of this film?
I liked it. Is it something I would write home about? Possibly not. But considering that this is probably the first Marvel film I've gone to see in the cinema since Endgame came out.
Really?
It's a nice... Yeah, I got really franchise fatigued with Marvel. There's just so much stuff out there, TV and film, there's a lot. So this was the first foray back out into the cinema to see some Marvel content. I very much enjoyed it. The first third was a bit of a horror film vibe for me, because you're doing all that, you're doing everything that Sue Storm's doing, and then she's also doing that while really pregnant. Yeah, I don't know, man. I know it's supposed to be cute when she's like, "Oh, do you wanna check on little Franklin? Let me just make my belly invisible, and you can just check on him."
Didn't you find that gorgeous, though?
The sentiment, great. I have no maternal instinct whatsoever, and for me that was a bit gross, a bit weird, a bit gross.
Okay, so for me that was
It's gorgeous, yeah.
parental wish fulfillment, because the thought of being able to see your baby in 3D, I have been in those rooms where you're looking on screen and you think it's something and
Yeah, it's is that a foot? Is that a head?
Actually,
what is that?
I have a distinct memory of when we saw Riley on the monitor, first time. He had his hands over his face and he just kind of did this kind of big O shape with his mouth, It was delightful. And then moving around, it's that's his bum, and there's his legs, and all this sort of stuff, So the idea of just being able to make the belly invisible and see through and be he's fine, everything's okay.
I think it's good.
It's gorgeous.
One thing I really did appreciate as well is that never, and I didn't realise really until I was watching it, that not once, not ever, does anyone go, "Oh my God, Sue, you can't go to space, you're pregnant. Oh my God, Sue, are you sure you should be doing that? You're pregnant." No, nobody cares. Nobody's oh my God, make sure you sit down, make sure you do this, don't do that. But, you're pregnant. No one walks on eggshells. No one feels the need to wrap her in bubble wrap.
Yeah.
She's continuing to be an absolute badass.
Yeah.
Just doing what... We're going to go talk to Galactus. I'm basically 9 months pregnant. Yeah. It has to happen. Let's go. Get me in a spaceship. I could be due tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah.
We've got to see Galactus. Crazy. Queen behaviour, to be honest, but also 100% insane.
Straight up queen behaviour. Absolutely. It's quite compelling seeing a pregnant woman in those kind of situations of peril and all that sort of stuff, and the way her pregnancy is never questioned her competence. It's hard to work out who's the MVP of this, because it's typically shown as being Reed Richards, and yet flipping Johnny Storm, who's kind of thought of as the dumb one of the team a lot of the time, he actually manages to translate an entire alien language and come up with something like that,
Yes, honestly, the Storm siblings, it's the meme where it's the Fellowship at 100% strength and it's everybody, and then 99% strength and it's Aragorn and Sam. The Fantastic Four at 100% is everyone, and at 99 it's the Storm siblings.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. Claire has yet to see it yet, but there is one moment where it honestly looks, as they meet the Silver Surfer for the first time, it honestly looks like Sue Storm is cosplaying as my wife Claire, because they have the same kind of sort of teal, long sleeve jumper. And I remember seeing Claire in that so much when she was pregnant, and it just seemed so bizarre to me. Now, I'm pretty sure it's time for Julia's
It's
facts.
my facts time. I got a few. I got a couple.
Awesome.
That I just scrounged up from somewhere. So obviously we know that the Thing is a rock person.
He is.
And the Thing is not really there. He's CGI. Sorry, kids. The actor is there somewhere, but most of them CGI. So sometimes they needed a filming stand-in for the Thing, which is a very specific rock that was picked out from the desert by the director himself, which they thought looked most the Thing-like, and that was basically the lighting reference and the placement reference for doing some of the more complex CGI for the Thing. And her name is Jennifer. Jennifer the Rock. Who I think should be applauded for her commendable contribution to the film.
Absolutely.
And speaking of alternate castings, you know I love.
I know you love them. I know I love
castings. To imagine what if.
It's your jam, baby.
It's my jam. So what if instead of Joseph Quinn, we had Paul Mescal as Johnny Storm?
Oh, don't do this to me. This is
Lakeith Stanfield as the Silver Surfer.
Oh.
Whom audience may remember from the Book of Clarence.
Yeah, Book of Clarence. Sorry to bother you. Yeah, he's amazing.
A few candidates for Sue Storm, including Amanda Seyfried, Bryce Dallas Howard, Margot Robbie, Emma Stone, and Megan Fox were all considered for Sue. But I don't think I think I like Vanessa best.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought that Margot Robbie would be getting a bit of franchise fatigue herself as well, thinking about it, you know? Being Harley Quinn in one thing and then having to be the Invisible Woman over on this. I think Vanessa Kirby is definitely the best of the bunch there.
Best choice. Pedro Pascal is going to be hard to beat, but he could have been replaced with Adam Driver, Jake Gyllenhaal, Matt Smith, Dev Patel, or Zachary Levi, or Rahul Kohli, whom I love. He's done a lot of stuff with Mike Flanagan, so Haunting of Bly Manor.
Yeah, who was he in?
Fall of the House of Usher.
Who was he in those ones?
For the House of Usher, he plays the rebel child whose name escapes me with tattoos, but he's the one with the black cat.
See, already in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've had John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. So it's a pretty high bar. And then before that, we're not going to talk about Miles Teller as Reed Richards.
I forgot that film exists, and it kept getting referenced when I was in my research. I was like, "What? This is 2015. I would remember this." It's that one.
I remember taking Claire to see it, and there's that tremendous sinking feeling of, the film's not good, and I've just taken this hot girl to see this film, and it really sucks.
Even looking at the poster's all moody and navy blue.
Dark,
you know what I mean? It was that happy superheroes can't possibly be happy and fun and slightly whimsical, which is what I did love actually about this film was the 60s whimsy without any of the 60s
problems,
social norms, you know what I mean?
Well, there's just an offhanded line about how Sue Storm's Future Foundation has managed to convince every nation on the planet to demilitarize. I was like, can we please go live there? Can we please go live there? It sounds delightful.
Send me to Earth 828.
Yeah. Man.
So yeah,
give me a trilby and a thick tweed overcoat and I am there.
So a few what if scenarios there.
Love it.
So speaking of past Fantastic Four films, the real OGs know that there was a Fantastic Four film made in '94, but it was never released.
Yeah.
I think if you delve deep into the YouTube archives, it's there somewhere. But the OG Fantastic Four from that film do actually appear in this film. So that montage where they're saying, thank you, Fantastic Four. Yeah. The original Reed and Sue can be seen as newscasters, and the original Ben and Johnny Storm are nuclear power plant worker people, amazing. But they all show up at the end to say, thank you, Fantastic Four, which is really nice. There's also several references to Jack Kirby and Stan Lee.
There is,
and
yeah.
The OG Fantastic Four stuff in this film. So obviously, as we've mentioned, it's Earth 828. Jack Kirby's birthday is on August 28th. 828. Yeah. There's an advert for Timely Comics somewhere in the. I'm not sure where. Apparently, there is somewhere. I assume it must be in Times Square. But obviously, again, this is not news to some people. But Timely Comics was what Marvel used to be before it was Marvel. And obviously you have the Excelsior rocket after Stan Lee's.
Yes, I saw that. That was
Excelsior.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, I love that. I don't know if you noticed, there's one scene when the Silver Surfer arrives in Times Square, and there's one just cutaway moment where there's these two dudes working on a big kind of easel. One's got they've both got like dark hair, one's got very thick hair, and the rest of it, and they just come and look out. And to me, that looked like a young Jack and Stan working on sketches and drawings there. And obviously, Stan Lee died back in, I want to say 2018, 2019, that sort of time. And Jack Kirby died back.
Dark times.
Yeah, it really is. And Stan Lee dies, and then there's the COVID lockdown. I'm wondering if there's a connection. The world goes all to hell. And obviously, Jack Kirby died back in 94, so he never really got to see a lot of the sort of success that the comics would go on to create in many ways. So it was quite nice that they still get these little bizarre little cameos in weird places. I loved that. My
last little juicy tidbit, you'll have to forgive me because I've only ever seen his name written down. I've never heard it pronounced. But Eben Moss-Bachrach.
And Bachrach is what I've been working to.
He's the first Jewish actor to play the Thing, or Ben Grimm, who is a canonically Jewish character.
We are going to get to that Jewishness later. So, yeah.
That's the end of my facts.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Julia. I love those. So, just a quick reminder that if you would like us to stay on the air and ad-free, you can go to www.patreon.com at the God in Film podcast and sign up to our Bishop Waller Bridge tier, where you can check out our longest ever episode on the life and works of one Bruce Springsteen. Here's a clip. He's brought up Catholic. The third chapter in his autobiography is literally titled The Church. He talks about the weirdness of going to confession, where he talks about thinking up like a list of acceptable sins. Then he says, how much sinning could you have done at a second grade level? Plus, you can hear additional interviews and special bonus episodes like our God in U2 and God in Gaming episodes. And if you're a bit strapped for cash and want to support us without spending money, then leave us a 5-star, actually leave us a 12-star review. So that would be do 2 5-star reviews and 1 2-star review just to see if we can get it up there,
Yeah, just to make it even.
Yeah.
And fair. Yeah.
Leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Podbean, the occasional toilet door, or wherever you're listening to this. It makes a big difference in pointing people towards the show. And now it's time for our guest. Now, this guest is an absolute star. To me, I think to some extent, there might not be a God in Film podcast if it wasn't for this guy. He was part of the inspiration for the whole thing of just, can we find Bible metaphors in mainstream films? And he's an absolute delight to be around. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Right, I'm Nick Matthews, a good friend of Giles Goff, an admirer of his work.
Love it. That's how everyone should introduce themselves on the show.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what you deserve.
Nick, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I knew when Fantastic Four came out, I would have to see it with you.
Mm-hmm.
And also when I realised we were going to cover it on the show, I knew there was nobody else who I could talk to about the Silver Surfer except you. So let's get into it. Who is the Silver Surfer and what's his comic book origin?
Right, well, the first appearance of the Silver Surfer, I believe, was in March 1966, and I've been waiting nearly 60 years for a good adaptation. So it was in the Fantastic Four, number 48 on page 7, and the title of the book was The Coming of Galactus.
That's interesting. So by that point, Fantastic Four has been going for about 4 years, roughly.
That's right. He's first described as an incredible figure, this is the Silver Surfer, hurtles through the cosmos, a being whom we shall call the Silver Surfer, for want of a better name. It's in 1966. Then we had to wait a couple of years for him to get his own magazine.
I love that they say the Silver Surfer for want of a better name, because they can't think of anything better at that moment.
Quite modest, isn't it?
And Stan loves alliteration.
Yes, the legend has it that he's Stan Lee's favourite character.
Really? That's fascinating. I didn't know that. So how's the character evolved since the first appearance?
Well, it's been fleshed out quite a lot in the double-length comic book, The Origin of the Silver Surfer. We discover that he's on the planet Zenlar.
Mm-hmm.
He's been threatened by this big, huge cosmic entity called Galactus.
Yeah.
Who basically comes onto planets and consumes their energy, people and all.
Really nice, simple motivation there. He's hungry. He would like to eat your planet, please.
He's very greedy. So he comes to Zenlar and wants to basically consume it and the whole planet, all its people, everybody's going to be consumed. But Norrin Radd offers himself instead as a sacrifice, if you will, to be his herald, to go out and seek other worlds for him to consume, to satisfy this hunger, so that his own planet will be spared. So he gives up family, friends, true love, etc., freedom, to go and serve Galactus. So that's the first part, if you will.
Yeah.
He then goes on and go around space, finding planets and so on, until eventually he comes to a little planet called Earth.
I've been there.
I've been there myself. Yeah. It's a good place to live.
A friend of mine lives there.
Yeah. And so Galactus follows in his wake, ready to destroy the Earth. And the Silver Surfer, in an incredible move, rebels against Galactus and stands against him and thwarts him. And in return, he gets banished or exiled or restricted to Earth's atmosphere, and so can't go anywhere else anymore. And so this sort of Sky Rider of the Spaceways, as he's called, is now restricted, and his freedom is gone because he defied Galactus and saved the planet. And that's how he evolves. It's interesting because he's really trying to make atonement. He's here on Earth with a purpose. He saved the people, but actually wants to make his past actions right. He wants forgiveness. Because he's led Galactus to so many other planets which have been consumed, and so he feels guilty for that, really. And again, he's given up his freedom to be stuck here on Earth, where, of course, he interacts with the people in this sort of what's described as a sort of transcendent way, human. He's almost having divine qualities, trying to help people, trying to defend the weak. He's got compassion, he wants to see justice, but he's constantly frustrated by foolish people.
Yeah, I've met them too.
One of the key things about the Silver Surfer really is his loneliness. As he himself says, he soars alone, and he's always been alone. And he feels alone when he's here on Earth, misunderstood. He tries to be compassionate, do what he can, and he wants to help humanity. He has incredible power, but with compassion as well. But all the time, he's also seeking this forgiveness and making amends for his sins. That, again, is that sort of Christian concept of making amends, needing forgiveness, needing absolution to ease his conscience and find some peace. Interestingly, there's a quote I sort of wrote down that he said, the ones which was, "Now at last I have found something worth fighting for." And that's us. And doesn't everybody need that?
That's a good line.
I've got a quote from AI. AI gets everywhere, doesn't it?
It really
say this.
does.
He serves as a metaphor for the human divine incarnation, a character who experiences earthly suffering whilst possessing cosmic power, similar to the Christian concept of Christ. In fact, I've called him sometimes the Silver Sufferer, not just the Silver Surfer. And he does suffer a lot.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that compassion and strength and ability remains.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So why do you think they use Shalabal, the female version, rather than Norrin Radd, the male and original version of the character?
I've been wondering that. I don't know for certain. There's a few things went through my mind. One was the fact that we're talking about a different universe and Earth, aren't we? And maybe this emphasises the concept of the multiverse and the fact we're in a different universe where this particular Silver Surfer, Shalabal, who in the original is Norrin Radd's true love, becomes the Silver Surfer and this particular Earth on this particular universe. So maybe there's that involvement. It also means there's a different spin from the previous movie, for sure, and it establishes the fact we are in a different world completely. I wondered as well whether the makers are trying to emphasise the role of strong women. It seemed to me that Sue Storm comes across as the de facto leader.
Yeah, she's the MVP, isn't she, really?
Making crucial decisions and obviously they're at the forefront of things, more so than in the comic book, particularly comic book of the 60s. And the other obvious point it struck me was a possible emotional attachment with the Human Torch.
Yes, there's that lovely line in the film where Johnny's like, yeah, guys, I get it. Johnny loves women. Johnny loves space. There's a space woman. But seriously, guys.
Put it together, yeah. Those are my sort of 4 ideas, but maybe there's another reason that we don't know about. But it works. And coming to someone who's been, as I say, 60 years following the Silver Surfer, I guess, it didn't offend me.
Yeah.
And it worked. And I think the whole movie works in its own right.
100%. Nick, thank you so much for talking to us today. As I say, the Silver Surfer, I like him or her, but they're not my favourite. I really love having someone who's so passionate about the character come and explain them to me. Do you want to tell the listeners the first thing you showed me the first time I came to your house?
Are you referring to my huge portrait?
He took me into his study and there's this massive framed picture and it's the Silver Surfer attacking the mighty Thor.
It is number 4.
I say this with heartfelt respect. Nick is who I want to be if I grow up. So thank you so much for being with us today, Nick. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So, Julia, that was Nick Matthews. What do you think?
See, I thought I was a proper nerd about certain people, but I realise now I don't have a gigantic portrait of any of them in my house, and now I need to correct that immediately. So, if you'll excuse me.
It was just this moment when, like I say, when he was like, "Come here, come look at this," and like I say, his family, none of them are geeks, and he's got this massive Silver Surfer poster. I was like, wow. And he's got Fireball XL5 and he's got the Batmobile tumbler in his office and stuff like that. He's so wonderful. He's so kind-hearted and gentle. He's absolutely my hero. Now it's time for Finding the Faith in the Film.
Ba-ba!
So, Fantastic Four were one of, if not the first superhero team book Marvel created. And they debuted in November 1961. And it's in these characters that we see, or at least I think, we see some of the philosophy and the theological influence, conscious or otherwise, of its creators, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, I don't know how much you know about this, Julia, but Stan and Jack are the kind of creative pairing that are responsible for originating much of what become the Marvel Universe. Jack was the seasoned artist and Stan was the writer and to a great extent the showman. Jack, I think, was a little bit older than Stan. Jack was an established artist back in 1941. He's the co-creator of Captain America. So he would have been the one drawing Cap punching Hitler. At least I think I think he was. Joe Simon, I think, who was the co-creator, was also an artist in his own right. And Stan, I found this out in researching this. Stan joined Timely Comics at, I think, 19 or something like that. I think he was the boss's nephew. So something nobody...
Stanley, a Nepo baby?
Something, yeah, Stanley, Nepo baby, man. Yeah.
It's okay, we'll forgive him.
It's okay, you know. So much has been said about Stan's, how can I put it, relaxed approach to the truth when it comes to the creation of many of the characters that he was famous for. I remember him saying, well, I think a character is created when you come up with the idea for the character. But Steve Ditko, who drew Spider-Man, thinks that the character doesn't exist until you draw the character. So they become the creator for it. So there's a lot of this tension. So have you heard the phrase, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan?
Do you know what? I've never heard that.
Oh, have you
that
not?
Is such a good line.
Right,
That's
okay.
sequestered away now in my brain.
So it's just one of those things where if something is successful, everybody wants to claim that it's their idea. It doesn't surprise me that there's conflicting accounts about who's responsible for what proportion of the creative output. Suffice to say, in a collaborative process, there's going to be a fair amount of overlap in who claims responsibility for what. If you're in a meeting, if you're kicking around ideas, it's really difficult sometimes to be like, which bit was my idea, which bit was your idea, because they kind of bounce off each other. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What's important to remember is that despite their differences in personality and demeanor, Jack and Stan had a lot in common. They were both white, male New Yorkers in the middle of the 20th century. And perhaps most importantly, for the purposes of this podcast, they were both Jewish. Now, do you notice that there tends to be a lot of Jewish creators in the comic book industry at this time?
Yeah, it feels like a lot, most of them,
Hmm.
or at least the ones that I have looked at.
Yeah.
Because so obviously we did. One of my first forays was a Captain America episode.
So there's Jack Kirby. Then I don't know about Joe Simon, but the creators of Superman, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, they were both Jewish, and there's a reason why there's so many Jewish creators in the comic books industry, and that's because in the mid 20th century America, the anti-Semitism is so rife that it's creating a strong barrier to getting any more prestigious jobs. So you can't get any jobs in advertising. You can't get any jobs doing anything more prestigious. And at this point, comic books aren't considered special or valuable in any way. It would be like collecting a newspaper or collecting the funnies. These days, you'd have to be exceptionally talented and phenomenally well connected to get a foot in the door at DC or Marvel. Whereas at that time, all you needed was like a high school education and the ability to write or draw, which is enough to get you in through the door. Okay. So no one's really bragging about their work in comics. There's this
so
love.
Weird how that's changed.
It's mental, isn't it? It's so weird. And it's funny, when you hear Stan in interviews, Stan will say, well, our books do this and our books do that. He keeps referring to them as books. He doesn't say comic books. Do you know what a fun thing I found out recently? Because obviously Stan Lee's real name is Stanley Lieber. And he just shortened it down because when he joined Timely Comics, he went by the pen name Stan Lee, partially to make him sound more sort of anglicized, and partially because he was saving his real name for his more important literary works that he would create after.
Oh my god. Did he ever make any of those important literary works?
I would argue all of it was an important literary work, quite frankly. So as I was saying, comic books were largely disposable. You might sort of like cut out the monsters in them and stick them on your wall, that sort of thing. That's why getting hold of a copy of something like Action Comics 1 or Detective Comics 27, so that's the first appearance of Superman and Batman respectively, is so rare. It just wouldn't occur to anyone to keep a copy. Now, Stan Lee was of Jewish Romanian heritage, and his views on God are a bit interesting. Let's put it that way. They don't quite fit neatly into any one particular box, and his words on the subject sometimes indicate atheism, sometimes agnosticism, and sometimes something else entirely. And he had this one friend, a writer called Jim McLaughlin, and they went for lunch together for like 20 years, apparently, or something like that. Stan apparently wasn't much for socializing outside of work. Basically, whenever at 5:30 every day, he was out the door because he wanted to go home and spend as much time with Joan Lee, as much as possible. And that's something else entirely. That is a love story for another time. I don't know if you remember in X-Men 3, I think it's them in that one, or it might be X-Men Apocalypse, but there is one where Joan gets a cameo as well. I don't know if you've heard of the character of Gwen Stacy in Spider-Man, but he based Gwen Stacy on his wife, this sort of gorgeous, statuesque blonde, and he would say something like, well, I had this kind of hustle going on where I was the commissioning editor and I was also a writer as a freelancer. So whenever I wanted something like a new car or I wanted to take Joni out somewhere nice and treat her, I'd commission myself to write a story, and that's what I do, So
for a moment, it felt like he was in the room with me.
Excelsior! Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Jim McLaughlin said that Stan loved to quote Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat line, where he says, "Did the hand of the potter shake?" To Stan, it meant that just as the hand of the potter could make an imperfect jug because the potter is flawed, so too is God flawed in his creation of an imperfect man. So, in essence,
controversial.
Yeah, Stan believed in God, but thoroughly enjoyed the notion that God was far from perfect. That's quite interesting, isn't
That's
it?
juicy. I do like that.
Like, from a theological perspective, I can't agree with it whatsoever, but it would solve a lot of problems. Do you know what? It would make a lot of sense in some cases, you know? So I can almost, from a distance, I can almost appreciate Stan's particular headcanon there. But it does make me think, because as this obviously isn't in keeping with either Christian or Jewish beliefs, it might have impacted how Stan created godlike beings like Galactus. Okay, so if you're a secular Jew, you're going to be very familiar with the Old Testament. It's going to be something that he's going to have had sort of that he's going to have to have studied at some points before sort of turning away from his faith, you know. And there's a part of me that wonders if there's something to the creation of Galactus. Okay, so Galactus has decided that Earth is marked for death and he's going to destroy it. And that has a clear parallel to the God of the Old Testament. First of all, he floods the earth or he destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you know that story?
I kind of know the essence of it in that they do something bad there, and God's like, get rid.
Hmm.
Like,
I mean,
this is why you do this bit, and I don't.
yeah, no, that's pretty much it. You know, there's a story where two angels arrive at Sodom and Gomorrah, and Lot, who is like the only good man in the entire town, takes them in, and then the men of Sodom and Gomorrah come down on Lot's house, banging on the door.
No way, I think I remember this part now, actually.
Yeah. Where are the men who came to unite? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them. And that is, Genesis 19, verse 5.
If someone, just don't do that.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right?
Just don't do that.
Here's the thing. The extremely homophobic people will say, so you can see, so they wanted to do gay stuff, so that's why God destroyed them. And like, yeah, my dudes, maybe it's that, maybe. Or maybe it's the thought of gang rape, you know, maybe it's the thought of sexual violence. That's the thing, because rape isn't about love. It's not even really about sexual attraction. It's about power and control. Do you remember the line in Shawshank Redemption where Andy is being talked to by Red, and he's being pointed out like those are the guys who, if they get you alone, they're going to do bad things to you. And he says, do you think it will make a difference that I'm not actually homosexual? And he said, I don't think so, because to be homosexual, you would have to be human to qualify. And these guys are not that, you know? So it's city of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Don't knock on some dude's house and demand that you hand people over in there for sex. Don't do that. That's not cool.
That is not cool.
Leave people alone.
And also the idea is like, if a foreigner comes to you, you're meant to treat them with hospitality, you know? There is some other messed up stuff in this chapter, which I'm not going to go into because I don't have to. And
it's not.
so suffice it to say, God is like, okay, I'm going to murk these guys. You know, like,
just wipe the save, start again.
Yeah. There's this brilliant bit though, Genesis 19:23. By the time Lot reaches her, Lot is the one righteous guy in Sodom and Gomorrah. They get him out, they get his daughters out, get his wife out, and then it says, then the Lord rained down sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. Fairly intense stuff. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
And again, whilst I'm not denying the veracity of the Old Testament, a lot of the Old Testament is the Jewish account of history, and a lot of the time it is, and God punished those people because they're terrible, but we're God's people and we're great. So that's a vibe that comes through it quite a lot. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
But either way, you get this strong sense of a sort of dark, scary, uncaring God, and I think we kind of get that with a bit of Galactus. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a character like Galactus, I think, does look how someone who is skeptical of God might see him. Merciless, uncaring, and with a really silly hat thrown in for good measure.
Yeah, it is kind of silly.
Yeah.
With the eye thing as well, like it's got that, that anime trope where you have the very calculating, scheming individual, usually very logical and intelligent with glasses,
Yeah.
and they're gonna lay down some dis, or they've worked out the puzzle or whatever, and they push their glasses up to a point where the light hits it in a certain way, and the glasses are just completely white.
Yeah.
It was giving me that. When he'd put on the little, I don't know, man. The glasses pop was weird. I don't know the significance of that.
So let's move on from Galactus and let's think about the Silver Surfer for a moment, okay? Because while the plot of this film is relatively straightforward, the characterization is exceptionally deep. Julia Garner plays the Silver Surfer, and she looks distinctly more female than casual fans might expect. But her tragic backstory is much the same as the original Silver Surfer. So her character is called Shalabal, and the original Silver Surfer is Norin Rad. And the backstory is almost exactly the same. They're forced into an impossible situation where the Silver Surfer becomes the Herald of Galactus in exchange for him sparing her planet. Now, if you just end it there, it's a nice, neat Messiah parallel, like Nick was talking about. Nick was in fact one of the first people that ever made that connection for me. And if you end it there, it's fine. But you have to remember, it becomes the Silver Surfer's job to choose the planets that Galactus will devour. So she's at best a problematic and maybe tragic savior, but really flipping problematic,
How does she pick? What's the criteria?
Dip. I don't know. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the scene in Oppenheimer where I think the Secretary of Defense is looking at the list of places that they can bomb with the atomic bomb, and he says, "No, it can't be Okinawa. My wife and I had a honeymoon there. It's a lovely place." And it's a stupid reason to pick. But when you're at this point, all you've got is stupid reasons, haven't you?
Yeah.
But there's something I was thinking about. The Silver Surfer doesn't quite fit so easily into the savior role. Savior for some people, and then like harbinger of doom for everybody else, There's that beautiful moment where she kind of gets her redemption, where Johnny is looking, he's seeing how many seconds he's got left to get Galactus through the portal, and he says, tell Franklin Uncle Johnny loves him, and I swear I welled up at that point. I'm welling up just thinking about it, Before you have kids of your own, nephews and nieces are like the next best thing. Do you know what I mean? Joseph Quinn gives such good Johnny Storm in this.
Yeah.
He's wonderful. He's smart. He's still funny. They still got the character right, but he was a character you can actually care about.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting off topic, okay? There's something else I was thinking about, and it was inspired by my conversation with Nick earlier today, because if Galactus is like an inversion of God, then one could possibly argue that the Silver Surfer is like the inversion of Satan in Milton's Paradise Lost. Mm-hmm. Do you know that poem at all?
I know a bit. I studied Frankenstein at A-level.
Right, okay.
And I happen to adore Frankenstein as a book.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I know a little bit about the contextual bit on Lucifer in Paradise Lost.
Yeah. Basically, sort of John Milton writes this epic poem, Paradise Lost. In some ways it's good, and in some ways it's bad, because it's one of the first things that ever makes Satan a sympathetic character, because people have been picking up that particular trope and running with it for quite some time now. But
I can fix him. I can fix him, I swear. I can fix him.
But Daddy, I love him. So obviously they are completely different sets of different types of characters and the rest of it. But the dynamic is still the same. You've got this all-powerful being who has this rebellious servant. He casts him out, and the servant becomes like this antagonist to the main character, to the godlike being from there on in, So I thought it was fascinating how, when seen in this context, the Silver Surfer is like an inversion of Satan, or an inversion of Lucifer. Do you know what I mean?
Looking at Nick's point about it, the original Silver Surfer gets trapped on Earth. Mm-hmm. right? So it is kind of like, and for him, that's not great.
Yeah.
Because he wants to do his best, but also he doesn't. It's not from Earth. He can't go anywhere else. So that, I suppose, that is a bit like being trapped in his own personal hell or purgatory almost.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I wanted to talk about next was Sue's love for Franklin. What did you think of that scene where she comes and does the big speech to all the assembled people?
I did enjoy that, like, because really what you have is the trolley problem, right?
Yeah.
You give up one kid for like 6 billion people, it does feel like a no-brainer. But
Yeah.
obviously that one person has got people who care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, yeah, it's unreasonable. Pick another planet to eat, dude. Go away. But that speech at I want to say like the Fantastic Four Tower, it's not really what it's called, is it?
Oh, the Baxter Building.
That's it, the Baxter Building. That was just a really lovely moment.
One thing I thought was interesting was, again, you're right, it's the trolley problem of, like, would you give up your child to save the world? And Sue Storm was like, no, thank you. You can get stuff. We will find another way around it.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's not the same, because obviously Franklin's an infant and Jesus was a fully grown man, but there seemed to be parallels there. It reminded me how intense that feels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, like I forget what it is that Sue says exactly, but when she talks about I would move heaven and earth for you, and that's what gives Reed the idea of, yeah, how about we just teleport the earth a little bit to the left?
Yeah, I know, right?
Crazy.
Yeah.
But do you know what is even crazier to me is when it's like, okay, we're going to need a lot of power for this. It's going to absolutely wipe the grid. So everybody get together and turn your lights off past 8 p.m. And everyone did it. I
know, right?
Bro, there were people in World War II who didn't follow blackout rules because they were like, no, why should I? And these people all got together and were like, yeah, we'll turn everything off after 8 p.m.
Yeah, what was...
They just did it.
Really enjoyable was just where people can work together to make the right choices for the planet, and there's nobody there trying to make a buck, nobody else trying to pull a fast one or anything like that. And it's...
And nobody being like, well, can we really teleport the Earth to the left? I think, what big Fantastic Four doesn't want you to know? Like, there was none of that.
Yeah, what big Fantastic Four doesn't want you to know?
Everyone just was like, yeah, this is the plan now. And everyone just did it. That honestly, for me, pushed this film from, like, superhero just into full-fledged, this is a fantasy movie.
Yeah.
It makes you feel sad as well, thinking about it. Like, think of what we could have.
And I think I had a similar feeling during COVID when you could see what is possible when everybody wants it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You could see how much you can change the world when something bad can affect rich and powerful people as well.
That's so crazy. Yeah. What a correlation.
There's also Ben Grimm, who I found him a really comforting presence in this film.
Yeah, there's something just very gentle giant about him, and it's not, again, they don't, because it's really sad. I can't remember if I saw a screenshot from a comic or whether I read it or something, but basically after their DNA is affected, and obviously Ben Grimm gets the worst end of the stick. He's like, well, I'm just a thing. Like, it's a name that he imposed on himself, which is heartbreaking and tragic to me. Like,
yeah, but there is an argument to be made for the difference between disability where you can be passing for quote unquote normal able-bodied members of the public versus when you can't be, when your disability is so obvious. So I've got a visual impairment, which most people don't ask about, quite frankly. And that's probably because normally behind my pair of sunglasses, nobody would know any different. But if I was in a wheelchair or if I was quadriplegic or anything like that, you would have to notice and you would have to make adjustments for and stuff like that. And that sense of not being able to just kind of fade into the background, I think is got to be really hard. One thing I think that this film did really well was that they didn't dwell on the thing as a monster aspect. It wasn't like, oh, poor me. It's because you don't need to say it. It's not. It's obvious.
He's just there cooking in the kitchen.
Ebon Masbachrik, as you say, Jewish actor playing a Jewish character. And Ben Grimm is one of the first openly Jewish character in Marvel, I think. Would you like to know some other Jewish superheroes?
I would love to know some other Jewish superheroes.
There is Kitty Pryde from the X-Men.
The Wolves one, she can go through walls and stuff. That's it. I was like, I got this. I got it.
Magneto, which you probably guessed,
of course, yeah.
Interestingly, there was a few different retcons when it came to Magneto. When I was growing up, Magneto was of like Romany traveller heritage because somebody didn't think that having a Jewish supervillain was such a good idea. And like, I see what you mean, but also, come on.
Yeah, just traded it in for something that was also bad.
Yeah. So Magneto's Jewish, so I think that probably makes Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver Jewish as well. Ben Grimm is thought to be inspired by the co-creator Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby, he grows up on, I think, something like Clancy Street.
Yes.
And the Thing grows up on Yancey Street, stuff like that. I'll double check the name later, but arguably most Marvel Comics' most prominent Jewish character. And I think, do you remember a while back we talked about in Superman, that Superman is almost like Jewish nerdy kid wish fulfillment, because there's that stereotype about Jewish people not being strong or being more intellectual, that sort of thing. And yet you make the one Jewish character incredibly strong and the strongest member of the team. So it's really refreshing to see the Thing's cultural background foregrounded in this film. And I think along with the Hulk, the Thing is probably one of the earliest examples of in pop culture of a character who looks monstrous but is actually noble and heroic. So he's a really good example of a line from 1 Samuel 16 verse 7 where Samuel has been sent to anoint the new king. And he goes to meet Jesse, and Jesse says, bring me your sons, I'm going to anoint one of them as king. And he's like, oh, that guy looks great, he should definitely be king. And then God's like, no, it's not that guy. All right, well, that guy over there looks amazing, that son should definitely be king. It's like, no, it's not that guy. And then he says to Jesse, he's like, do you have any more sons? Because they're not here. And Jesse goes, well, yeah, I've got this one son out tending the sheep in the fields, David. I'll bring him in, but trust me, you won't want to see him. And
who's ever heard of that guy?
Who's ever heard of that guy? So I imagine David is scruffy as hell, comes in, and there's this lovely line, truly, God does not see what man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord sees the heart. And I love that line. So, one of the last few things I wanted to think about was Jack Kirby, or Jack King Kirby, as we've talked about. This film is a love letter to Jack Kirby, and by virtue of his death in '94 and his quite retiring personality, Jack didn't always get the praise he deserved by the general public. And Fantastic Four is an attempt to kind of redress that. As Kevin Feige states, we wanted this movie to be an unabashed celebration of Mr. Kirby, who I think should be spoken of in the same breath as Stan Lee at every moment. He was never as vocal or as at the forefront as Stan was. He also passed away long ago, and he didn't get to see any of what his work would inspire. So, lastly, the credits end with a quote from Kirby himself. He says, "If you look at my characters, you will find me. No matter what kind of character you create or assume, a little of yourself must remain there." Now, weirdly enough, I can't help but think that's the kind of thing God would say about humanity himself. In fact, I'm pretty sure he did. He says, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. That's Genesis 1:27. So we know that every human being is created in the image of God. Every person, whether you like them or not, has just a little bit of that spark of the divine in them.
Oh my God, even Elon Musk.
Yeah. Because you have to remember, Elon wasn't born that way.
I suppose.
There was something along the way that made him like that. Personally speaking, I think you can give somebody too much money and that will actually ruin them.
There's a concept in Tolkien where it's like dragon sickness.
Right.
So Thorin's line is susceptible to it. I believe that basically when you have so much wealth, i.e. a dragon's hoard worth, it compromises you up in your mind, and you get a bit twitchy and weird and evil.
Yeah, 100%. And again, this is the challenge with when it comes to Christianity is loving your friends is easy. Loving your enemies is the tricky bit. There's that line, and it's funny that God and Kirby make the same kind of points, because I don't know if you know, but in the comic books, there's this storyline called Fantastic Four. Authoritative action. I'm holding it up to the screen, listeners. You can't hear, but it's amazing. And
very cool.
Believe it or not, there's this one scene where the Fantastic Four are sort of sent into some kind of heavenly realm, and it all looks beautiful. It's all like big, kind of glowing doors and the rest of it. They're off to meet God, and then God is behind this one door here, and they open the door. And it's Jack Kirby. It's Jack Kirby.
So cool.
So just right in the way.
That's so meta.
It is incredibly meta because Jack Kirby is their creator. And there's a lovely line in it where Sue Storm, she's talking to Johnny and Ben, and she says, "Hush, you two. Show proper respect for Reed. Why am I taller than the Almighty?" And Kirby, or God, or the creator, or whatever we're going to call him, is, "What you see is what I am to you. Don't worry, it's a compliment, not an insult. That's what my creations do. They find the humanity in God." There's a brilliant bit where God basically takes a phone call from somebody, and it says, "Incredible, to say the least. Ring, ring. Pardon me for one moment." And then Johnny goes, "God has a phone? What's the number? 1?" And then Kirby's on the phone. He says, "Uh-huh. And then they're in the Forbidden City, the human jungle. Right. Suddenly the Black Panther springs from the trees. Okay, we'll make it the Silver Surfer. Yeah. Write it up and I'll start the designs." And then Sue goes, Who called?" And then Kirby/God says, "My collaborator. Nuff said." And "Nuff said" was Stan Lee's catchphrase for about 50 years there. So I love the idea that God could just be
Some dude.
It's just a cantankerous old man, just kind of working away on his drawings and kind of letting his creations just kind of run away with him. So that wraps up the Finding the Faith in the Film. I'd like to say a quick thank you to our patrons, James Pittard, Simon Sella, Miss Sarah Cooper, Philip Coleman, Lance Kane, and one Natalie Faye Miniker. We have a review.
Oh, amazing.
So this is from Kathy Bobbles, who gave us 5 stars. Thank you. Called it a great podcast.
Woo.
I happened across this podcast via a friend who follows on Instagram. It's a perfect chitter-chatter for me while I work. I love the choice of films and the fact behind the films and finding the faith in the film part. I will be tuning in regularly and have a lot of back issues to catch up on and films to watch too that I've never heard of. Thanks, guys.
That's so nice.
Join us next week when our episode is going to that other Star-based franchise where we start to look at Andor. Julia, have you had a good time talking about Fantastic Four?
I've had a fantastic time.
Nicely done. Nicely done there. I see what you've done there. Okay.
Yeah, it had to be done, really.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
God in Film is hosted and created by Giles Goff.
That's me.
Mixing and editing by Giles. Our logo was designed by
Julie Walsh.
And our theme tune was composed by
Rick Lee.
Waffle editing by
Natalie Miniker.
Please rate and review.
Please give us 5 stars because that's a nice thing to do.